Could Jared Kushner's testimony today affect the Russia investigation going forward? Senior political analyst Brit Hume joins us with some thoughts on that. Good evening, Brit.
Hi, Brett.
It was pretty detailed.
It was pretty detailed. It was pretty specific. And I noticed with some interest that Senator Wyden there was saying it was lawyerly. It certainly was, and it was no doubt carefully lawyered as well. Bear in mind that Jared Kushner is now represented by one of the sharpest criminal defense lawyers in town. That would be Abby Lowell. Now, this behavior of his, volunteering to come forward, volunteering to testify, issuing a detailed 11-page statement ahead of any testimony, is not the kind of thing any smart defense lawyer would ask you to do unless he, the lawyer, were pretty convinced that you were telling the truth and could back it up. Otherwise, you're exposing your client to the potential of a perjury prosecution. So this is the kind of move that under normal circumstances would be considered quite risky. So what you get here then is a guy coming forward, bringing all this information forward, obviously carefully gone through and gone over by him and his lawyers to make sure that, you know, all I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and the rest of it. It's an unusual strategy, and it suggests to me that, you know, you'd never let your client do this if you thought he were guilty of anything, and if the statements weren't true. Yes, he's going to end up testifying all right, but we now have a sense of, I think, of what he'll say, and I would be surprised if Senator Wyden would find much more to. I mean, he can ask a million questions, but I'm not sure how much farther he can go with Jared Kushner, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we should point out today was not under oath behind closed doors,
no,
but it was.
But once you submit that to a committee, you're locked in. That is when you're called to testify. That is what you're going to have to testify to, or you will have already changed your story, and that's obviously an untenable situation to be in.
So if we are to take all of the details in that 11-page report on face value, and does it change the dynamic going forward for the rest?
It suggests to me that the Jared Kushner piece of this, maybe in terms of a lead toward some collusion conspiracy, maybe a blind alley. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't others involved in the campaign who did things that Kushner either didn't know about or was not involved in. I mean, it doesn't completely clean the slate. But it suggests, I mean, he says not only did he say he was not involved in any collusion, he said he didn't know anybody who was. Now, as close as he is to the inner circle with Mr. Trump, then candidate Trump, you kind of would have to believe that if it was going on, he'd have known about it. And if he knew about it, he's not going to put forward a statement that's going to end up being under oath that says he didn't know anything about it. So right. I just think that this statement, more than most this is not, as you point out, Brett, some blanket, vague statement of innocence of the kind you get from people who are in trouble. This is something very different indeed, and it just strikes me that it's entitled to a measure of credence.
And if you did say something that was not true, you're out on a limb.
You're in trouble, and no good lawyer will let you do that.
Brett, as always, thank you.
Thank you, Brett.